Many of us have fond memories of playing our favorite games growing up. Some, unfortunately, also have not so fond memories of playing some bad games. Back during a time when there was no internet, we weren't able to look up game reviews. We had to rely on magazine subscriptions or even simply reading the back of the box while using the screenshots as a point of reference. Whether you made the mistake of renting a bad game from the video store, thus ruining your form of entertainment for the weekend, asking your parents to buy you a game you were so excited for, only to be let down, or were unfortunate to have that obscure relative buy you a game without knowing what it even was. We've all been there before. Popping the game into the console, hoping for a new adventure or mind-blowing experience, only to be faced with disappointment. Now I know that there's a lot of worst games ever lists, and everyone wants to say that E.T. for the Atari 2600 was so bad that it caused the video game crash of 1983. But today, I want to discuss games that I personally think are worse. I'm talking about near-broken games, games that should never have seen the light of day, and games that some consoles even refuse to play. Before starting this list, I do want to briefly discuss E.T. In order to make this video, I did take the time to play the game to capture some footage. But, like most games in the Atari age, this game requires a little use of imagination. As E.T., you need to find the pieces of the phone to phone home. The scientist captures you and takes you away to research you, the agent takes your pieces of the phone, and Elliot will come to revive you. Seems pretty faithful to the movie so far. It took me some time to get used to the controls so I didn't keep falling into the pits after climbing out. But the real difficult part, finding the pieces of the phone. They appear in a new random location each time. As I mentioned before, the agent will take away any pieces you have if he touches you. I found myself getting frustrated very much with this game, but I never thought to myself that it was a bad game, just very difficult, which was kind of a thing back then to get the most longevity from a game. I could definitely see myself trying again to beat this game. Moving on to the actual games that I think are worse than E.T. These games are pretty bad, so trying to find an order to put them in would take forever. So starting off, and as usual, in no particular order, I present you Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the NES. This game, I felt I had to add for several reasons. This game doesn't really follow any rules. The spider rises and climbs randomly. The cane, which seems to be your only weapon, has no real use. Sometimes the bomb hurts you, and other times it doesn't. Like, why can I escape the bomb going this way, but not this way? When you play as Jekyll and your life meter is drained, you turn into Hyde. But if you didn't get very far as Jekyll, you won't have much of an opportunity to turn yourself back. I don't fully understand how this game works. It's just best to skip this one. Next up, I present you with an entry in the Evil Dead series of games. Specifically, I captured this one on the Dreamcast. It seems to want to copy the success of Resident Evil by using the fixed camera angles with the tank controls and an inventory management system, but in this game, it all just feels clunky. There are way too many enemies that can spawn at any time, and trying to fight them all at the same time is ugly and cumbersome. The one saving grace of this game is the use of Bruce Campbell reprising his role as Ash Williams.
Press the friggin' start button, would ya?
Next is a game that really needs no introduction. Superman on the Nintendo 64, or sometimes referred to as Superman 64, is just awful. You start off in a virtual world that Luthor has created for Supes, and immediately have to navigate a maze for Luthor. After this, you're immediately expected to stop 2 cars from hitting a pedestrian. The controls are absolutely atrocious, so it makes navigating the mazes and accomplishing the missions even harder. Fail and you have to start over. No, not the car mission. You have to start over from the rings again. But once you stop the cars, you can finally continue on to more rings. The rest of the game is more of the same. Ring maze, action sequence, rinse, repeat. I guess they assumed making a video game based on the hit series would be easy money, but not in this case. This next game is infamous for how bad it is. It even has a fan site that is dedicated to liberating these games from stores so no poor unsuspecting soul will ever be exposed to it. While capturing footage for this game, I noticed something unusual with my Retron console. At first, I thought the game may be damaged, but it seems the console is actually refusing to play it. It required you to actually confirm that you indeed want to play this game. It tries to be a fighting game, but the controls are so clunky. Executing a special attack It takes so much work. I'm not just messing around, I'm actually trying here. It even takes so much time to perform a simple jump. You get hit before you make it into the air. It's not even worth me exploring the rest of the roster. Just stay away from this one. To keep things interesting on this list, I decided to throw in a Mario game. I know what you must be thinking. How could there possibly be a bad Mario game? Well, there are actually a few. One of which is on a console that I don't even have, so I can't play it to comment on it. But the other, I have the misfortune of possessing. Mario is Missing. It's an absolutely awful attempt at cashing in on the Mario craze of the 90s to create an educational game. You play as Luigi as he searches for his brother who has gone missing right in front of his eyes. But in order to do this, you have to explore several areas and restore lost or stolen artifacts. I honestly couldn't bear to push myself past this first world. If you want to play a Mario game where you explore different parts of the world, I recommend just playing Odyssey. Here we are, in the home stretch, the last two games on this list. Unfortunately for both, it seems they were sequels that no one really wanted or asked for. First, Bubsy 3D. Did the first games do well enough to warrant a venture into the 3D realm? Even if it did, don't you think it would have been better to make more of an effort at maintaining what made those games worth playing? This game's controls alone make this one worthy of this list. But on top of that, add the lack of any notable music or sound effects combined with the cringeworthy voice work of the main character.
Now, what would a platform game be without platforms?
And the textureless 3D surfaces that make up the strange world, you get a massive abomination of a game. It tries to be a 3D platformer, but with controls like this, you don't even want to try taking the chance of stomping on an enemy. With Super Mario 64 having released months ahead of this, gamers would have already been exposed to what a 3D platformer should look and feel like. The 3D world itself seems so primitive and even reminds me of earlier attempts at building a 3D world. But at the very least, those attempts can be excused given the hardware of the time and what it was trying to accomplish. Finally, the last game on this list, Trespasser, tried to be a sequel to Jurassic Park: The Lost World. This game hardly feels complete, with rock formations popping out of nowhere, all objects being rendered as 2D sprites until you get close enough for them to render as 3D polygons, and a foundation that seems to not even have been finished, as the walls kind of float above the ground in some cases. And whose idea was it to put the life meter on the character's actual chest, so you have to look down her shirt to check your health? It tries to be a first-person shooter / action adventure, but falling a bit flat on the shooter part and the action adventure part. You might make the argument that it's a product of its time, but Half-Life would come out only a month later, which basically redefined the FPS genre moving forward. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about this game, and as far as I'm aware, there's not even any mention of these events in any of the movies up until now. So it's just best to leave this game where it belongs, in the past. And those were a few games that I feel are more deserving of the worst game ever. Think of anything that I missed? Do any of these games bring back some not so fond memories? Feel free to mention it in the comments. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to finding these pieces so I can phone home. Until next time, this is